And so do you have a number in mind of what you think is going to be at that end of the 10 years of what Bitcoin's price might be?
Look, my view of Bitcoin is if you value it as digital gold, it's better gold than gold, as Anthony has said before, and that makes it worth 20 trillion. And if you think of it as digital property, like a digital hotel in cyberspace or digital real estate, well, it's going to demonetize a lot of real estate and a lot of property, and that makes it worth 100 trillion. And if you think of it as digital money or digital energy, because you're going to move it 1,000,000 times a second and split, when the hotel gets split into 1,000,000 little hotel minutes and rented out around the world and recomposed and moves at the speed of light, then I think it's worth a lot more than the 100 trillion. It becomes worth a $250 trillion plus thing. So I think Bitcoin's going to go up with volatility and cyclicality over time. And
so let's just put this in
all of our lives.
Let's put this into context. On the low end, you said 10 trillion. On the high end, 250 trillion. Bitcoin's market cap today is 1.5 trillion.
Yeah.
So you're looking at substantial upside, 10x to 200x. Anthony, you did something at Skybridge that is equally.
Do I have to speak? Because I could listen to Michael Saylor all day and night. So you Anthony, sure you want me to speak? Because Michael's doing a great job.
Yeah. Anthony, you have to speak. So,
okay, go ahead.
But you can only speak to the question that I ask.
All right, go
ahead. You did something equally unusual as Michael. You decided to put Bitcoin and later Ethereum as well into your flagship funds at Skybridge. So talk about your thinking, because you had a different journey and a different logic stream than Michael's.
Well, my journey actually starts with Michael Saylor. I think he may remember this. I listened to him on a podcast about his investment in Bitcoin, and I reached out to a mutual friend, and I asked Michael if I could have a phone conversation with him, and then we did that. And then I asked Michael if he could join me on a Salt Talk series, and he did that as well. And Michael, I think, brought me, frankly, to my eureka moment. So even though I'm not a corporation in that several dozen corporations that Michael's referencing, I want to say thank you to Michael here in this public forum for helping me see what he saw. And Michael basically explained to me something that is seminal that I think needs to be repeated everywhere, that Bitcoin itself is a network. And if you understand the exponential growth capabilities of the Bitcoin network and how fast it's grown since its inception, outpacing other networks like Google, Facebook, Amazon, other types of networks that work off of Metcalfe's law. And then Michael also brought up something to me, which I'm sure he'll remember. He said, well, let's take Coca-Cola. And suppose we destroyed Coca-Cola tonight. And we had the words Coca-Cola. Could we restart Coca-Cola? And of course, the answer is yes. So he was using the example of an old-fashioned network. And I don't know how many wallets there are now, Bitcoin. We can guess at that. There's probably between 180 and 250 million wallets from our best guesstimate here at Skybridge. And if Kathy Wood is correct, it goes to 1 billion, Rick. You know, we'll be well over $500,000 a coin at that moment because of the scarcity. So first off, I want to say thank you to Michael. One of the more brilliant things that Michael has done in his life is shared his insights with other people. His institutional forum, I don't know, Michael, was that 6 months ago or 8 months ago, was one of the more brilliant things that I participated in. And, you know, we need people like Michael to explain to people who are conditioned for the temporal world where we're going and why we're going there and how we're getting there way faster than people originally expected. And I'll just say one last thing. We are so early. It is mind-bogglingly early because you have some of the elder statesmen of the financial services community, whether it's a Warren Buffett, a Charlie Munger, or Jamie Dimon, who still have not spent the time on this. And what I would encourage everybody listening into, please spend the time on it, because if you spend the time on it like Ray Dalio did or others, you end up owning some of it. And I think it's worthwhile for yourselves, your portfolio, and your team.
So when you did this, Michael, what was the reaction that you got from current investors in your fund and prospective investors you were trying to get them to invest? What was their reaction to you putting a significant portion of the portfolio into Bitcoin?
You know, I think that everybody goes through this learning process, and you know, first people, if I'd done this before March of 2020, they would have said you're out of your mind. But you know, if you'd asked me about this in February of 2020, I would have said, why even asking me this? I wouldn't have even considered it. So I think that people weren't ready to embrace this idea before March of 2020. But after March of 2020, if you said, hey, I have an idea, I think everybody will work from home and we'll Zoom everywhere, and I'm going to try something new in my business, you would have said, well, you know, there's a war on COVID. It's a difficult time. I guess you got to try new things. So I think that people became more open-minded after March. And we started from a point of view of open-mindedness. My board was open-minded, but it took them a while to get educated. And then with our outside investors, we didn't know how they would view it. We're a public company, so we took the safest course. We created a Dutch auction, and we said, we telegraphed what we're going to do. And we said, this is our strategy. If you don't like it, we'll buy you out. And we waited 20 days. And this, by the way, we offered the Dutch auction at 140 a share. The stock was trading 120. The stock traded between 130 and 140 for a while. People weren't sure the auction was going to go off. And then they came to their senses and they're like, wait a minute, the 140 is a put. The stock should be above 140. Then it traded above 140. And we didn't know whether we'd have 250 million tendered or nothing. And we only got 60 million tendered. So what that tells you is, at the end of the day, all but $60 million worth of the shareholders decided that they liked the strategy, or at least they would try it. And they tried it in the 150, and then the stock went to 160, and then it went to 180, and then it went to 200. And then around 220, I think Citron wrote some kind of report on Bitcoin. And then people started thinking that, well, maybe this wasn't a bad idea after all. This might start working. And if you ask the shareholders how they felt about it then, they would have given you a different answer than during the Dutch auction. Let me tell you, I met with 10 shareholders during the Dutch auction, though, on a standard investor conference. And I thought, I went into 9 of the 10 were positive, and I went into one meeting, and my head of investor relations said, this person's really not liking this strategy. He's asked a lot of questions about it, so get ready for a difficult meeting. And so I went in there all suited up for battle, and he said, tell me about Bitcoin. And I said, well, it's a digital monetary network, and we want to use it as a currency inflation hedge, blah, blah, blah. And this is technically why I like it. And he goes, oh yeah, I already know all that. I own Bitcoin. And I thought, well, why you beating me up on this? And then he wasn't. And then I thought, why are my investor relations people telling me to be worried? And what I realized is Bitcoin is one of those things where everybody just kind of feels the need to ask the question, have you thought it through?